1967 felt like possibility. 1968 felt like consequences. This was the year everything got heavier, and you can actually trace that shift through the songs themselves. Not just how they sounded, but how they were written, recorded, and released. Let's start with a song that became historic for a reason most people don't realize. Sittin On, The Dock of the Bay, Otis Redding. Otis recorded this on December 7, 1967, at Stax Studios in Memphis. 3 days later, he was gone. So when this song was released in January of 1968 and went to #1, it became the first posthumous #1 hit in US history. But the bigger shift is in the sound. If you compare this to his earlier records, the difference is obvious. No driving horn section, no urgency. It's slower, more stripped down. Even the ending, the whistling, wasn't finished. He hadn't written the final verse yet. They left it in. And that incomplete ending became one of the most recognizable parts of the song. That tells you everything about 1968. Perfection wasn't the goal anymore. Honesty was. Now let's move into something that wasn't subtle at all. Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, James Brown. Released in August of 1968, recorded in Los Angeles, with a children's chorus pulled from Watts. And structurally, this song is almost minimal. 2 chords, that's it. Everything rides on rhythm and repetition, because the message was the point. Radio stations in some markets refused to play it at first. Didn't matter. It still hit #1 on the R&B charts. Because by 1968, people weren't waiting for permission to say things out loud anymore. Now here's something that sounds light, but isn't. Mrs. E. Robinson, Simon and Garfunkel. This song comes straight out of The Graduate. And if you've seen that film, you know, it's not really about romance. It's about disconnection, uncertainty, a generation that doesn't quite know where it fits. And then there's that line, "Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio?" That wasn't random. DiMaggio represented stability, consistency, a simpler time. So when that line shows up, it's not nostalgia. It's a question, and audiences heard it that way. That's part of why this became the first rock song to win Record of the Year at the Grammys. Now let's talk about a song that didn't just define a moment. It named a genre without realizing it. Born to Be Wild, Steppenwolf, released in June of 1968, hit #2 on the charts. And right there in the lyrics, heavy metal thunder. At the time, that wasn't a genre. It was just a phrase describing motorcycles. But later, that phrase becomes the label for an entire style of music. And musically, you can hear the shift already. Distorted guitar is no longer background. It's the centerpiece. This is rock getting heavier, on purpose. Now let's shift to something that didn't follow that trend at all. The Weight, the band. This song didn't chart high when it was released. Not at first, but it kept showing up. On the radio, in films, in covers by other artists. And it stuck. Because while everything else in 1968 was getting louder and more experimental, this went the opposite direction. It leaned into older American roots, gospel, folk, storytelling. But the structure, it never really resolves. The chord progression loops, the story moves, but doesn't explain itself. And that lack of resolution, that matched the moment people were living in. Now let's talk about a performance that changed expectations. Piece of My Heart, Janis Joplin. This song already existed. Irma Franklin recorded it first, but Janis didn't reinterpret it. She redefined it. Her version pushes her voice right to the edge. You can hear it strain. That wasn't an accident. They kept those takes. Because by 1968, technical perfection mattered less than emotional impact. And this performance made it clear. You didn't have to sound perfect to be powerful. Now here's a song that hides its message in plain sight. People Got to Be Free, the Rascals, released in the summer of 1968, right after the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy. And instead of sounding heavy, it sounds upbeat, almost optimistic. That was intentional. The band made a decision. If you want a serious message to reach mainstream radio, you make it easier to listen to. And it worked, #1 on the charts. But underneath that sound, the message is direct. Now let's bring in something that feels simple, but isn't. Hello, I Love You, The Doors, #1 hit. Built on a very basic structure, 2 chords, repetitive hook. But here's the interesting part. This song was actually written years earlier, around 1965. They just held on to it. And when they finally released it, it worked commercially. But it also drew criticism. Ray Davies from the Kinks pointed out how similar it sounded to All Day and All of the Night. And he wasn't wrong. So even in 1968, you see this tension between originality and commercial success starting to surface. Now let's go deeper. So Sympathy for the Devil, the Rolling Stones. This song didn't start the way it ended. Originally, it was closer to a folk arrangement, acoustic, slower. But in the studio, they rebuilt it, layer by layer. Percussion first, then piano, then guitars. And that samba-style rhythm gives it this steady, hypnotic drive. And lyrically, it's written from the perspective of a figure who moves through history, referencing war, violence, and political events. Not commenting from the outside, speaking from within it. That's a major shift. And finally, let's close with something internal. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, the Beatles. George Harrison wrote this during a time when the Beatles weren't exactly functioning as a unified group anymore. And you can feel that tension. He even brought in Eric Clapton to play lead guitar, in which almost never happened, outside guitarist, on a Beatles track. But it changed the atmosphere in the studio. People focused more, played tighter. Clapton's guitar was then processed using double tracking so it blended with their sound. And what you end up with isn't a flashy solo, it's a restrained one, because the tone of this song isn't anger, it's quiet frustration. So when you look at 1968 through the details, you see something very clear. Songs became more personal, more intentional, more structured around message, not just melody. Recording choices mattered more, lyrics carried more weight, and even imperfections were left in if they told the truth better. 1968 wasn't about sounding bigger, it was about meaning more. And that shift, that doesn't go away. If one of these songs hits differently now that you know what went into it, drop it in the comments. Because next up, and everything peaks, keep that turntable spinning.